One of the nation's current and increasingly polarizing issues is the importance of education and the direction in which the system is going. Parents have become unhappy with the public education system, resulting in the exploration of more privatized options and the use of education vouchers offered as government funding for a student to attend a school of their choice. However, while they have their benefits, these voucher programs ultimately cause more harm than good. In the short 12 years I have worked in public education, I have seen it constantly change with some newly improved system or structure. With that, and the ever-increasing support for school choice and constant competition from private schools, public education has been left struggling. The voucher system has actually been around since the inception of American education. In the excerpt Education Vouchers, a Primer, from the book The Clearinghouse, it states that we can trace this idea back to books such as Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith and also In the Rights of Man by Thomas Paine. Both men were encouraging the American government to provide the funds for poorer children's schooling in hopes of giving them the same opportunities as wealthier families. Christopher Jenks, along with colleagues from Center for Study of Public Policy, proposed a type of federally funded vouchers experiment in the early 1970s. This experiment was led with the same ideas presented by Smith and Paine, along with similar theories from economist Milton Friedman, to allow the family unit, instead of the government, to serve the educational needs of their children with support from public funds. Across the board, these systems work in much the same manner. Part of a student's tuition is given to families that are deemed qualified, who may then use it at any participating private or public school they choose. From this, issues arise like being able to define what families are eligible, finding schools that are willing to accept the vouchers granted to those families, and being able to properly distribute the available funds. When looking at families of eligibility, focus is placed on people that are within certain demographics. Essentially, the amount received will be based on family income, with vouchers going first to families at or below the poverty line. Other programs are based around the quality of the local public schools. If the school has been labeled failing in 2 of 4 years, students become eligible for a voucher that can be used at a school of their choice. Next is finding those institutions, both public and private, that will accept vouchers and voluntarily agree to participate within the requirements of the program, commonly being acceptance of the voucher amount as full tuition with no additional fees, and admission of all students regardless of their ethnicity, ability, or special need. Programs must also be willing to participate in audits and state-mandated achievement testing. Following this, the vouchers are distributed to the qualified families in varied amounts. In some instances, there is no limit on the number of vouchers, and the children attending failing public schools may receive them if they choose to do so. Others limit the number of the vouchers per year, and when the number of applicants goes beyond the amount available, a lottery system is implemented, with vouchers first going towards lower-income families, followed by those with greater incomes if there are still vouchers available. In either system, public or private, the contributions to families can vary from a few $100s to entire tuition. Though more often, vouchers do not cover everything, and many private institutions will waive remaining costs or supplement the voucher with other funds. However, choice is not always an equitable option for all families. Even with the use of a voucher system, a family's ability to select schools that provide an educationally rich environment and maintain quality control is directly related to their level of income. Clearly, when seeking better educational opportunities, higher income families will fare better than lower income families, especially in those cases where vouchers would be presented but would not cover full tuition. This is evidenced in Helen Ladd's article, School Vouchers, A Critical View, as she states, a family's decision of where to live plays a large role in where child attends school. To the extent that middle and high-income families congregate in well-to-do suburbs, their children tend to be grouped in suburban schools financed in part by taxes from large local property bases. Conversely, students whose families are restricted by their low income or by their race to economically or racially isolated areas of central cities will also end up grouped in particular schools, often those with high concentrations of disadvantaged students, insufficient resources, low average achievement, and high dropout rates. In theory, the voucher system would reduce the segregation of residences by income, the idea being that if these families with lower incomes had the ability to gain access to privatized institutions, separation based on income would be less likely. However, this does not account for racial preferences that might affect school and residential choices. In an excerpt from The Education Gap, Vouchers in Urban Schools, the point states, students' self-esteem will suffer from the high academic standards and strict disciplinary practices that characterize private schools. Greater racial isolation will result from both parents' preferences and private schools' admission policies, and as segregation intensifies, so will political intolerance and alienation. Another concern that has been raised is how voucher systems serve students with disabilities and special needs. In recent years, there has been a number of changes in how disabilities are classified and an increasing emergence of spectrum disorders. With this, there has been a growing call for special education reform. In the article, Vouchers for Students with Disabilities, The Future of Special Education, Wendy Hensel details this in saying, as the number of those receiving services under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, has grown, scholars and pundits have increasingly argued that the system not only is failing to meet the needs of many children with disabilities, but in some cases it's actively inflicting harm on them. Although Congress has attempted with varying success to address such concerns each time it has amended IDEA, it at least continues to believe that the current delivery model cannot effectively meet the highly diverse and at times intense instructional needs that are present across today's K-12 population. Few dispute that the federal government's failure to fully fund the mandates of the IDEA has left many schools grappling with the difficult task of trying to improve and individualize instruction in a time of tight education spending generally. However, attempts at privatizing special education fall short of delivering what is promised. While parents of special needs children find the idea of choice to be an attractive strength of the voucher system, we find that these programs primarily benefit students with mild to moderate disabilities, leaving the severe and profound without resources and no individualized instruction. Moreover, voucher programs, do not have to adhere to state mandates and standards, so parents seeking privatized special education will essentially waive the rights granted to people with disabilities by helpful programs like IDEA, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, and the Americans with Disabilities Act. These things are chipping away at an already crumbling public education system. A point eloquently stated by Michael Heiss in Educational Rights and Wrongs, Publicly Funded Vouchers, State Constitutions, and Education Death Spirals, when he says, the increasing diminution of an absolute and relative number of able and motivated students itself will transform a school's academic culture, climate, and political clout in less than desirable ways. A degradation of a school's academic culture or climate might launch a school into an education death spiral and hasten a race to the bottom. I understand the idea the voucher system presents, but through all this, we must acknowledge that these voucher systems are not quite adequately equipped to provide the best possible education. I believe that both those in public and private school systems want to give children the best education and opportunity to thrive. However, we can make a greater impact if we make it our priority to fix the issues inside of public education, like reevaluating policy standards and practices to keep and adequately distribute money and resources, lessen the emphasis on standardized test scores, and focus more on effective teaching. Finally, together as educators, along with parents, hold both our system and each other to a higher standard and expectation. Thank you for your time.